My name is William Corless, and this is the Workplace Podcast. Brought to you in association with Yellowwood, providers of executive coaching, corporate training and facilitation. Your external learning and development partner. Each week we focus on a different aspect of the workplace. We hear from guest speakers who will be subject matter experts, who I believe are incredibly talented at what they do. These experts will give you a different perspective and insight to work life, with the aim of empowering you to take a different path to success in all aspects of work life. These perspectives will include career and personal success, leadership, high-performance teams, and creating a better work-life culture in your organization. Yellowwood. Take a different path to success with your career, team, and organization. Welcome to the Workplace Podcast. Our guest today is Berry Kruijning. Berry Kruijning, principal and founder of Kruijning Communications, is a trained and accredited professional life coach, certified NLP Master Practitioner, coach and mediator. Berry uses the principles of authenticity, courage and excellence to guide new and introverted leaders to become impactful leaders. As an introvert coach and leader, Berry understands the challenges introvert professionals face in today's loud and demanding world. She guides her clients by coaching them in private sessions on leadership issues, whether it's how to coach and give feedback, handle conflict and negotiate, speak up confidently in meetings, develop and engage the direct reports and peers, or manage up. Berry loves seeing these leaders step up as role models and become comfortable in developing and leading others, as well as managing up with effective and constructive communication. It's the most exciting aspect of our work. Additionally, Berry offers communication and leadership training programs to organizations that want to create a healthy culture and high-performance teams. Kruijning Communications serves clients from small 50 employees to large 50,000 plus employees organizations. And Berry has worked internationally with over 2,500 leaders, teams and individuals in a variety of industries such as high tech, finance, government and academia. Berry's skills and experience are based on her educational background as a master's in law from Utrecht University, the Netherlands, and experience from having worked for many years in human resources. In her free time, Berry spends time in the great outdoors, hiking, skiing, kayaking, and sailing. Berry, welcome to the Workplace Podcast.
Thank you so much, William, for having me, and I'm really excited to be here and on your very successful podcast. I heard.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Berry. And our topic today is the introverted leader. So our listeners might be listening in and they might kind of go, well, I don't think I'm introverted. I'm confident. What is introversion?
Introversion, it is really a temperament. And when we look at introversion and extroversion, so those are two sides of a continuum. Everyone is somewhere on that line between introversion and extroversion. An introvert is typically someone that likes to be alone to recharge, and an extrovert likes to be around people to recharge. And that's the biggest difference. It's a little bit more complicated than that if we dive into like the hormonal aspect of things, but that's basically the explanation of introversion, extroversion.
And if I'm in a meeting, then how might I know I'm an introvert? You know, what are the things that impact me in a meeting, or why might I walk away frustrated from a meeting amongst my peers or team?
Well, let me ask you, William, on the scale, would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert or somewhere in the middle?
I would be somewhere in the middle, definitely tipping towards the extroversion type.
Yeah. So you might actually recognize these things yourself. When we're in a bigger meeting, and I would say more than 4 or 5 people, the introverts are the people that are typically quiet, and they are speaking up whenever they have to say something, whenever they feel like they have to say something about the topic. They're just present, they're observing, they're listening. So it's the quieter, softer spoken person, often overlooked in the room, especially in a room full of extroverts. So that's you're looking at for someone with smaller gestures, softer voice,
Yeah. And so it's minimal body language, isn't it? It's more constraint is held, and they're more reflective. And sometimes when I speak with my own clients, if they're more introversion in nature, their frustration is, why bother in meetings? I hate people speaking over me, or will people listen to me? Or so what advice would you give to people if they wanted to own that space? What's that work that you do with people?
Yeah, I get that a lot. So that's very recognizable. Nowadays we have a lot of online meetings. So in an online setting, a lot of introverts like to use the chat function and like to participate in that way. And also, and then I think there's a part of being an introvert also educating extroverts. And so there's also a part of, I'm an introvert, I'm a deep thinker, I need some time to come up with my answer. So an introvert can also ask for that I believe that. And we can take a moment in the meeting to say, I really would like to give a thoughtful answer to this, but I would like to take a moment to think about it and collect my thoughts. And so really to help each other, the fast thinkers and the deep thinkers, in a meeting, to help that balance. And I think a meeting facilitator also needs to be aware of the different needs. A good facilitator is aware of different needs in the group and will facilitate that, make it easier for introverts to speak up and for extroverts to listen in that moment. So it's not all on the introverts.
And that's what I was going to think, is sometimes the extroverts were kind of go, oh, will you hurry up? Or that person isn't speaking, so I'm not going to trust them, or whatever. And here's what I'd like to, I suppose, inform people or make them aware of, is there are many strengths to being an introverted leader. And I think it's the unseen strengths that are the biggest challenge, because a lot of people, there's a bias towards extroversion people because we can see certain behaviors. So this is a challenge in people's careers, isn't it? So what are the hidden strengths that extrovert people may not be aware of?
There are, I say we because I'm an introvert. We have many different strengths, and I think the main things that jump out are we're very good listeners, observers of people, of situations, prepare really well for meetings, thoughtful, reflective. So in a sense, we're good decision makers, and introverts need time for that. They need time to collect their information and to prepare, and they make really solid decisions. Empathy, warmth. Introverts are social people in the sense that one-on-one introverts can interact very effectively in a warm manner. They make connections one-on-one. They usually have a small network, but it's a very solid network. And in organizations, that's so important to have a solid network, especially I'm thinking of introverted women, let's say in more male environments. I work a lot with women engineers, and to have a solid network is really key in their leadership role.
Yeah, I find this fascinating, coaching introverted leaders, and I think that's the thing is about their. I want to talk about networking now, because once they have a relationship with someone, it's about the depth of that relationship. Where in extroversion, it'd be breadth. So, I've got 2,500 people in my network, and then the introversion person might go, yeah, but how many people can you actually rely on or depend on or trust or bring a challenge, isn't it? So there is that piece about depth, isn't there?
It definitely, and that's, and that's one of the things that is often misunderstood is, although introverts are quieter, there is an enormous depth. And when we ask introverts a few questions, they will share and they will open up when start feeling comfortable with another person. That doesn't really come out in the first contact or in the first meeting with someone. So that is a challenge, and it's something for extroverts to understand and to know about introverts. It's like introverts are quieter, but have a lot to say. Very meaningful things.
And if I'm an extroverted team member, and for example, my whole team is full of extroverts, yet our manager then is an introvert, and we want them to share straight away and all this type of stuff, and I want to know what you're thinking, and I want an answer immediately, and all this type of stuff. What is it that advice would you give to that team if they're listening in here? What is it that we could approach our team leader in that way, or our manager?
That advice, that would be to help your introverted manager prepare by giving them a little heads up. And let's say if there's a conversation that needs to take place, give them a one-liner agenda, so they can already kind of start thinking about, even if it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, an introvert can think about, okay, what is the next step here? And so it's not often that it's right on their tip of their fingers, unless they have a lot of experience with the topic. As introverts, people respond secondarily. So that's give an introvert time to prepare. So give your boss a heads up what's coming. And also, if there's a change coming, give them a heads up of a change. And ask questions. I think that's an important part too. Although an introvert boss, once they're in a leadership role, they need to develop that kind of ad hoc response ability as well. So there's different things that people can do.
And when we talk about visibility then and networking, this is the thing that in careers then people are often overlooked. I know many people who are introversion nature would be averse to social media or LinkedIn or networking. So, there is that heavy bias towards extroversion. People say, well, they're seen to be the people who get things done. The reality is probably very different. So I'm curious to know what advice you give people about their personal brand to be more visible. How might they do that in a way that works for them, rather than competing with an extroversion type person? What is it that they could do that works for them?
Well, introverts like to write rather than speak. So that is something, and it's also something that I've used as a marketing technique for my own business and to connect with people, is by writing articles. Introverts like to do research, and so leaders could write about certain topics. They're probably more inclined to write an email than to pick up a phone and have a conversation. Or join a large meeting or so. With regards to networking too, it's like networking can be done for introverts. The last few years were basically, they were in heaven, because we can network from the computer and we can make really meaningful connections on LinkedIn, and we can make and have that conversation and develop a relationship and be a thought leader on social media. And we don't have to necessarily, introverts don't necessarily have to go to big, large meetings, because they will get overwhelmed. But with smaller group meetings are more comfortable. So yeah, it's a great environment right now.
It is. It's much more conducive to manage your energy. And that's the thing about introversion and extroversion. It is about where do you get your energy from and how do you manage your energy. If, for example, we're now moving back into a hybrid world where the reality is, if we're asked to go back in, we're asked to go back in for something that's quite large, then because I do a lot of coaching on this as well, is how do you start easing yourself into a big gathering? there, instead of just staying in one place, by the coffee machine or whatever.
The safe space.
Yeah. What advice would you give to people before they go into a big gathering like that? Because that's going to be the reality.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, depends on the gathering. When introverted people are seeing someone that they know, they tend to go there, and they connect one-on-one first in a bigger gathering. One-on-one, introverts are comfortable, and so usually people would scan the room and see if there is someone that they know and go there. Or someone that's also standing alone. Sometimes, because introverts are not shy necessarily. If there's one person that's just on their own, they can go there. And afterwards, it's really important for an introvert. You already mentioned it, and you've seen this in your coaching too, I think, is that introverts need to manage their energy. A wise introvert is scheduling about, time to recover after a big meeting or a big conference or those bigger group settings.
Yeah, I think it's really important you say that, because I often go through time management and personal productivity with people, and I would often say to managers then, after these, where are you scheduling in your alone time? And I think that's the most important thing if you're an introversion type leader, because if you're to flex to go into these gatherings or to have difficult conversations or whatever that's draining your energy, meetings, or is how you building that into your diary that you have alone time. You could be still emailing or whatever, but it's not sucking your energy. Is there any advice you give around that?
Yeah, it's not a luxury to have alone time. It's really a necessity. It's self-care alone time. I think, especially when I think back of that introverted leader with that extrovert team, for example, it is really helping others understand that there is this need for alone time. So it's really also communicating to others like, hey, there's a block of time during my day that I'll close my office door, and that I need that alone time. Let's say if you're working in the office. And of course, an introvert needs to schedule it and needs to stay true to their alone time. Because if introverts don't, they get overstimulated, they get irritable, less productive, less effective. And you see this too in your coaching work, I understand.
Is that always that open door policy of always been accessible then? It's about having certain periods where we have an open door policy rather than that full 24-hour access, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And, so a big part of my work, I coach introverted leaders, and I also educate extroverts, because I think it goes both ways. And so there's a lot of misunderstandings about introversion, especially in a more extroverted group. And I think there's a big part of educating extroverts. So it is a part of saying, hey, for an introvert, this is my need. I need to be alone now for a couple of hours. And unless the place burns down, and also for the introvert, it's not always possible, of course, depending on the work environment, but ideally it's a more effective leader.
I think that education piece is really important for both an introversion type person and an extroversion type person. So for the extroversion, it's to flex into introversion, to be more reflective and to do more listening. The downsides of being an extroversion type person or an extrovert is that we might be impulsive, or we don't listen, or we're rash in our decision making. We haven't fully thought things through. And for an introversion type person, it might be because I'm so fond of typing, I might overthink, or I might have 10 emails open and then not send any of them. And then my workload is building up. So when I'm working with people on workload and trying to manage the balance of doing the task and managing their team, this often comes up there. So there is that educational piece. Just on that, because I had that piece before with a client, and I'm just curious as a fellow coach, if somebody has 10 emails going on. There's a bit of perfectionism. It's not just introversion, isn't there? It's that attention to detail. There's a lot more. It's a lot more layered than just, oh, that's introversion, isn't it? I think we're quick to label stuff too quickly when there's a lot more to the context or a lot more to the personality.
Well, of course, there are different styles. So we have many different styles in the workplace. Where there's this well-known models that identify 4 styles. And there are different dynamics in each style, and it's not that is different than the introvert extrovert dimension. And so more people are more focused on a bigger vision, and other people are more focused on the details, and other people are more focused on relationships, and there's a group of people that is more focused on tasks, getting their checklists all done. So there are different styles within the dynamic of introversion, extroversion.
Go back to the networking piece. This is where Zoom and virtual calls and Teams is so good, because for introversion type people, they had an exit strategy. I know this is an hour, and I know not to schedule something afterwards, isn't it? There is that people have developed strategies then. So if you're going back into the workplace in a hybrid situation now, what is it? What else can we do
as introverts?
Yeah,
to save our energy. I think it's the balance in our schedule. And I think the key for introverts to be effective is to embrace the fact that they're introverts and knowing what they need in order to be an effective leader. And I still speak with people that are introverted. And when I coach them, I had a gentleman the other day, and he said, I actually feel shame around being introverted.
Oh.
And that was my response too. And and it's this man is a middle manager, manages a team of about 45 people, and as an introvert, he felt that people often have judgments about introverts, and they're not quite accurate. Yeah, so going back to the needs that we have as introverts, really embracing the needs that introverts have. So that's the inner work that an introvert needs to do, but wants to do when they want to be effective and authentic and really show up. I remember, a few years ago, because I've been struggling in the workplace too. I just want to be honest, I was an HR manager.
Yeah. And
I've had, before I owned my own business, and I've had my own struggles being an introvert. And I remember a few years ago, I decided to just embrace it. It's like, I'm an introvert. I can be quiet, and that's okay, because I do other things while I'm quiet that are as effective or even more effective than speaking up in this moment. And so I think embracing and really stepping into the temperament that an introvert in their temperament, and accepting, and I think that's the biggest thing an introvert can do for themselves in any situation, hybrid or in the office or online. I'm
so glad that you're embracing this, and there's a bit of self-acceptance, because I think in culturally or in certain organizations, there is this like, you need to have more executive presence or something like that. And it's not fully understanding introversion and its nature there. And it can be done. You can do excellent presentations. It's how you manage your energy before and afterwards. And as someone who knows many introverts, what I'd like to maybe ask you, if that's okay, about your learnings from those struggles is, what advice would you give to your younger self? So if I'm early in my career and I'm in the workplace and I have a preference for introversion, What advice might you give your younger self?
That's a great question. And the advice would be recognize your strength and go with that. And everyone that tells you that you need to be an extrovert, you need to be more speaking up, more extroverted, more showing up, give yourself time to do that. And it's okay. And it's more than okay, because once you embrace your introversion, and once you understand what that means and what your needs are, your specific needs, you can communicate those better. And your strength, you can communicate your strength better. So you become more visible in the organization when you can communicate your impact and your strength. I think it is about creating awareness very early on about navigating some of these challenges that introverts have, especially in an extroverted culture, such as, for example, the American culture that I work in. So,
and again, it's about that self-acceptance, self-compassion. These are my needs. And I've often come across people who are introversion in nature, and I made the assumption that they're extroversion because they're flexing up.
Yeah.
And then they will say, thank you very much, I need to go now. And they exit making no apologies. This is what they have to do. So this is part, like, it's a bit like you wouldn't ask permission if you needed a drink, or, whatever, or if you were hungry. And this is part of your energy then as well. So this is an important conversation to have, isn't it, for people, is just to say, okay, this is it. And what are my strategies? How do I flex when I need to flex? And within the context that I'm in, what are the challenges I need to overcome? So whether that is public speaking or speaking up more at meetings, then it is about giving myself time. Again, it's a bit might be giving feedback then to a facilitator or an extroversion type person one-to-one afterwards to say, you need to create space for me to move into that space. So, along those lines, it doesn't have to be just like that. But I think there is behind every challenge, there's some sort of opportunity there, isn't there?
There is definitely, and there are strategies to navigate. What I always stretch in with my coaching clients is that they really don't have to, they don't want to, change their temperament or who they are. And you're alluding to, but you can flex your behaviors. You can change something in your behaviors to make a connection with someone. And if that behavior is to be a little bit more outgoing, then that could be really effective. So that's going back to that introverted leader with that extroverted team. It's like there are moments that, they require to flex, and not to change the temperament, but to flex. And then you can go back to being energy management and all that. That's what needed.
And when I'm working with teams, we often do a psychometric personality assessment. So there's a range of tools that I use. I'm not going to go into them. It depends on the organization I work with. So I adapt to them. And often when I'm working in teams, we go through how we get our energy from, how we like to communicate, the level of detail, all the stuff that you covered before, how we prefer to make decisions. And some people who are maybe introversion in nature don't like to reveal certain aspects of themselves because that's personal, isn't it? So there's a bit about that personal boundaries and space there that people need to understand. Yet also there's something that we need to maybe let go a little bit. What are your thoughts around revealing introversion to my team, or if someone was apprehensive about that? Is it that they fear that it will be used against them or they'll be judged? What do you think is going on for people?
I think definitely there is some judgment around it. And I think the one-on-one conversations are really important. So I believe that if introverts have one-on-one conversations about what it means to be an introvert, and in work, what some things are that can come up as a challenge, or as not they're not only challenges, of course, so positive things. And so and I also I would discuss this in a kind of a smaller group setting, so one-on-one, or with two other people on the team. Also, and this, you're a facilitator as well. What I do in my groups when I do training, I have a lot of like try it conversations taking place, because in those conversations it's way easier for introverts to share. And there are judgments, and I decided at some point, what you think of me is none of my business, and I'm bringing my best forth as an introvert, and these are my strengths, and I feel comfortable with that. And so I really hope for a lot of people that they can get to that point as well.
And can I ask, we speak a lot about reflection for leaders and self-acceptance and compassion for yourselves, because leadership is a very tough job. I know sometimes I'm very challenging on the podcast, for leaders, but it's really to be thought-provoking. That's my intention. For somebody listening in here, what are the different ways during my work week that I should be trying to recharge? What's the self-care that I can do, whether I'm at work or maybe in the evenings? So say, for example, I have a young family. Work is demanding, home life is demanding, I'm a mother or father, I've lots on. What are the things I need to do to build that in?
That's a really important question, because that is our mechanism that is the introvert's mechanism to be able to show up when it's asked for, is to manage their energy. So I would say for the young parents, I've been a young parent. I've been a single mother for 20 years with two little kids, working in an HR management position. When we came home from school, they wanted to immediately do all these things. I said, I need 10 minutes for myself. So I asked them, I need 10 minutes. So maybe you can go to your room, do your homework or draw or whatever. I need 10 minutes. And so that, for me, in that moment, that was enough to recharge, because I told them, I cannot listen right now I would love to listen to you, and I would love to be present. I just need 10 minutes for myself. So asking for that time is really important, and also explaining why. Not everyone will. If it's your family, they will understand at some point, but not everyone will understand. But I think introverts tend to push through when an introvert feels that they're up to their used energy. Basically, they're getting overstimulated. If you push through, you get irritated. You cannot show up for the people around you, the people that you love in your family. So sometimes even 5 or 10 minutes is enough. It's the introvert's responsibility to ask for that. It's something that I really had to learn, and still sometimes, but it's not difficult for everyone. But it's really something that we need to do.
And may I ask, there's different ways to do that, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's just closing your eyes for 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Deep breathing is good. It depends. It depends on the person. I think that they're going, reading a book, even sitting down with a book for like 10, 15 minutes in a quiet room. I think the main thing is that that introverts learn ways to calm their nervous system. So it could be just sitting in a room by themselves, or sitting in the yard for 10 minutes with a cup of tea, just knowing that they can be completely by themselves, that there are no demands put on them. So that would be, setting some rules and some boundaries. It's also about boundaries within a family. But it could be yoga. It could be, I love to go into nature. So personally, I recharge in nature by myself, going on hikes or, the kayaking or whatever it is for per person. If you're with a family with young kids, you say, yeah, it's impossible to do. And, people might find ways to just carve out 10 minutes for themselves to even if you need to put a non-disturb sign on your door for 10 minutes, that could be working too.
And I think a good analogy, it's those solo pursuits, or that alone time is really important, whether it's kayaking or whatever. And I love going into the woods. We've had people talk about that forest bathing, if you want to call it that. And it's a bit like, charging your phone or electric cars now. That needs to be recharged. So if you don't recharge, you're going to not have the range or the bandwidth to deal whatever of personal challenges, professional challenges, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. An introvert cannot show up fully and authentically and connect with other people when they push through that, that energy, that lack of energy at some point. Yeah.
And that's a bit like what I say is, if you are going into the office meeting lots of people, make sure you are fully charged going into that. And what is your next recharge outlet after that. So it's a bit like planning your trip, isn't it? What can I expect?
It is planning, and it's every day. It's not like, okay, I'm recharged. It's every day. I think every hour, people need to introverts really need to look at, how am I doing? How am I feeling? What do I need right now?
Oftentimes when I talk to people about that planning piece, especially for that networking piece, is I might say, listen, have 3 or 4 questions ready, armed before you go in. And sometimes if people ask you a question, or is that gap, it's just like, okay, what is it? Like, those curious questions I often say to start a conversation going. And some people, that breaks the ice then, especially with one-to-one or groups of 3 or 4, that it allows them to be involved in some way. So that's part of that. So we are coming to the end of our time.
This was really fun, William. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah, it was a delight to speak to you. So many people may be interested in you and hearing more about you. How might they do so?
Yeah, so I have a website, of course. My website is crowningcommunications.com. And that is CROWNING, communications with an S.com. And I also am pretty active on LinkedIn. Would love to have connections on LinkedIn. And you can find me there under Berry Kruijning. And the spelling of my name, you probably will put in the podcast information, but it's KRUIJNING. And on Instagram, people can follow me at Introvert Impact. So those are some places that people can get in touch with me. And I would love to hear from folks. On my website, I just wanted to mention this. I have a library of guides for introverts and for the impactful introverts. And not for every introvert, but to become impactful introvert leaders. And right now, I'm promoting the Introvert Guide for mastering difficult conversations. So that's a really handy tool to prepare for difficult conversations.
Berry, thank you so much for coming onto the workplace. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Thanks so much, William, for having me.
That's it for this episode of the Workplace Podcast. My special thanks to this week's guest for a wonderful discussion. If you want to get in contact with the podcast about a workplace topic or a particular challenge that you're facing, contact me via Twitter at Different Paths. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, William Corless, Corless, or go to my website, www.yellowwood.ie. Yellowwood, your external learning and development partner. Provider executive coaching, facilitation and training. Take a different path to success with your career, leadership, team and organisation.